Before death, Gregory Peck revealed she was the one woman he truly loved. I used to think Gregory Peck's great love story was obvious. Then I discovered what he said late in life about Ingrid Bergman, and suddenly his carefully controlled public image looked very different. Because there was one woman he loved deeply, another woman who became his lifelong partner, and the difference between those two stories is what makes Peck's final years so moving. Gregory Peck spent most of his life looking almost impossible to shake. Tall, calm, elegant. The kind of man Hollywood could put in a courtroom, a war drama, or a romantic film and somehow make him look like he belonged there. But the private story was much less polished. And it started with a little boy who learned very early what it felt like to be left behind. Peck was only 5 when his parents' marriage collapsed, and according to the account in the source material, neither parent wanted to raise him after the separation. That sentence alone stopped me. Imagine being that young and wondering where you belong. His grandmother became the person who stepped into that empty space. She gave him stability. She took him to the movies every week. And without knowing it, she was introducing him to the world that would eventually make her grandson famous. But she wouldn't be there to see it. When Peck was approaching 10, his grandmother became seriously ill with stomach cancer. He remembered hearing her suffering at night. During the day, he would sit beside her and read the newspaper aloud. Then his parents sent him away to a Catholic military academy. He kissed his grandmother goodbye. It was the last time he saw her. That kind of loss doesn't simply disappear. And I think it helps explain something about Peck that becomes important much later. He spent his entire life looking for stability. On stage, in Hollywood, in relationships, and eventually in one woman. But before we get to her, we have to go back to the woman who represented something completely different, Ingrid Bergman. When Peck worked with Bergman on Alfred Hitchcock's Spellbound, something happened that neither of them expected. Peck was already married. Bergman was married too, and yet the two young stars developed real feelings for each other. Peck didn't spend decades publicly explaining what happened. Quite the opposite. He kept it private, for years. Only much later did he acknowledge that the feelings between them had been genuine. He said, in essence, that they were two young people working closely together during an intense period of their lives. And he admitted that he had truly loved her. That revelation matters because Peck wasn't someone who casually handed out declarations like that. His public image was built around restraint. So when a man like Gregory Peck finally admits that a relationship from decades earlier was real, I pay attention. But here's the part that can easily get misunderstood. Loving someone deeply doesn't necessarily mean they were the person you were meant to spend your life with. And Peck eventually discovered that difference. His first marriage to Greta Kukkonen had already become deeply unhappy. They had 3 sons together, and Peck cared enormously about his children. For a while, he tried to keep the marriage together. He even isolated himself in the Mojave Desert after an especially painful argument, spending a month alone and trying to figure out what he actually wanted. He knew something wasn't right, but knowing that and acting on it are two very different things. Then, in 1952, while working in Europe around the time of Roman holiday, Peck met a young French journalist named Veronique Passani. It was supposed to be an interview, that's all. Just another conversation for a newspaper. But something about her stayed with him. She was intelligent, warm, funny, confident, and unlike the glamorous Hollywood relationships surrounding him, this connection felt surprisingly normal. They met again, then again. A lunch became an afternoon at a racetrack, and gradually something much more serious developed. I love how ordinary the beginning sounds. No grand Hollywood entrance. No dramatic declaration. Just two people who enjoyed being around each other. Peck's divorce from Greta became final on December 30th, 1955. The next day he married Veronique, and that marriage lasted for the rest of his life. That's the part that changed the way I understood the headline. Because when people hear that Gregory Peck loved Ingrid Bergman, they may imagine some secret romance that defined his life. But the woman who actually remained beside him for decades was Veronique. She wasn't simply the woman he married after a difficult first marriage. She became his home, the stability he had been missing since childhood. And there was another detail that makes their relationship even more striking. Peck had become one of Hollywood's biggest stars. He could have lived almost entirely inside that world. Instead, he and Veronique built something quieter, something private, something that didn't need the public to approve of it.